After 4 years together, my fiancé looked me straight in the eye and said, "You're not the kind of woman I see myself marrying. I think I can do better." Then he left. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I laughed. And now, his new girlfriend just married someone else. And he's texting me like nothing happened. But those messages? My husband is the one reading them now. Elliot and I had been together just over 4 years. The first couple? Pretty great. We moved in after a year and a half. My parents weren't exactly thrilled, but hey, it's not the 1800s. We were one of those couples that just synced. Same shows, same food obsessions, same dumb sense of humor. He'd leave me little surprises, like a coffee on the nightstand or a random meme that made him think of me. It felt real. On our 3rd anniversary, he proposed. Nothing fancy, just a quiet lakeside moment where we'd had our first date. The ring wasn't flashy, but I didn't care. It felt perfect. I cried. I posted the photo. I called my mom. We started planning for a summer wedding. But about 6 months in, something shifted. It started small. A few backhanded comments, like how a dress would look better if I worked out more, or how maybe I should try a more polished hairstyle. I brushed it off at first. But then it wasn't just about my looks. Suddenly, I wasn't ambitious enough. He'd question me in front of his friends like I was dumb. He even made digs about my family being too simple. And somehow, I believed him. So I changed. New clothes, new hair, online courses. I worked longer hours. I was chasing some version of myself that he'd approve of. It's hard to admit, but I lost myself trying to be enough for him. The moment everything snapped was 3 months before the wedding. We were going over some final details, and he mentioned how his mom was worried my dress would be underwhelming. I asked what he meant, and that's when he unloaded. He said he'd been settling, that I wasn't wife material for someone like him, that his family didn't think I could carry myself well in the kind of social settings he wanted to be part of. And then, the line that stuck in my brain like a song you never want to hear again, "You're not worthy of being my wife." I just stared at him. After everything, that's what he really thought? That I wasn't worthy? I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. This man, who I had been bending over backwards to impress, was acting like he was the prize. And in that moment, something flipped. I looked at him and said, "You're right. We shouldn't get married, but not because I'm not worthy, because I finally realize I am." I picked up my bag, walked out, and went to my best friend's apartment. The tears came later that night, because 4 years is a long time. But weirdly, I felt lighter, like I'd taken off a weight I didn't even know I was carrying. Over the next few days, he blew up my phone. First angry, then sorry, then patronizing. I didn't respond. I stayed with Monica for 2 weeks. Canceling the wedding was a circus, but shout out to wedding insurance, it saved my life. My friends rallied. My parents were quietly relieved, even if my mom worried what the neighbors would say. Small towns, you know. The hardest part was going back to get my stuff. I planned it for when he'd be at work. But of course, he showed up halfway through. He went from begging to blaming in seconds. At one point he said, "Good luck finding someone else at your age." I was 29, like that's old or something. But that's who he was. More worried about how it looked than what it meant. And now, he's the one watching from a distance. Because the woman he left behind, she moved on. And when his desperate texts come through, they're seen by the man who never once made her feel like she wasn't enough. He kept saying things like, "Everyone's expecting this wedding, and my whole family already knows." But not once did he say he loved me. Not once did he say he'd miss me. And that's when it clicked. I wasn't walking away from love. I was walking away from pressure disguised as love. I moved into a small place across town. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I had space that felt like me. I could leave dishes in the sink, paint the walls whatever color I wanted, binge watch reality TV without someone rolling their eyes. And that quiet freedom, it was healing. The first month was rough. I'd still wake up expecting him next to me or catch myself reaching for my phone to text him something random. But slowly the silence stopped feeling empty and started feeling like peace. I picked up old hobbies I'd dropped because he called them silly. I reached out to friends he never really liked. Bit by bit, I started reclaiming pieces of myself I hadn't even realized I'd lost. About 6 weeks later, I started hearing things through mutual friends. Apparently, Elliot was telling people I had some sort of emotional episode, And that's why I ended things. Classic deflection. I thought about correcting the story, but honestly, it didn't matter. The people who mattered already knew the truth. What I didn't expect was how many people reached out. Friends I hadn't talked to in a while messaged just to check on me. A few even admitted they'd noticed how Elliot talked down to me, but didn't know how to bring it up. One of his cousins DM'd me to say she was proud of me for walking away. On the days I second-guessed myself, those messages were like little life rafts. Elliot's messages started fading out, but they got weirder. He never apologized. Just sent cryptic texts like, "Your favorite movie's playing at the theater tonight." Or, "Finally tried that sushi place we always talked about." Like he was trying to lure me back with shared memories instead of actual accountability. I didn't reply. Not once. 3 months out from that night, and I was starting to feel okay again. Really okay. My apartment finally felt like home. Work got better. Turns out, when no one's criticizing your every move, you do thrive. I even dipped my toe back into dating. Nothing serious, just coffee dates. Mostly to prove to myself that not every guy out there needs fixing. Sure, there were moments I missed the comfort of what we had. 4 years is a lot of shared history. But then I'd remember the way he looked at me when he said I wasn't worthy. And I knew. I hadn't lost something. I'd escaped it. So here I was, 29, single, starting over, and for the first time in a long time, actually excited about it. Update. Hey, it's been about 8 months since all that happened, and I figured it's time to catch you up. First off, thank you. I read every comment back then, even if I didn't reply. You helped me feel seen when I was falling apart. Now, let's talk about Elliot. About a month after my last post, I heard he was seeing someone new. Her name's Daisy. Apparently she comes from money, works in the city, commutes hours just to keep the job, and, according to Monica, who ran into them, dresses like she stepped out of a fashion spread. I won't lie. Hearing that stung more than I wanted to admit. Even though I knew he wasn't right for me, there's something about watching someone move on so fast that makes you question everything. I spiraled a bit that weekend. Scrolled through old photos, wondered if I should have tried harder to fit into his world. But then I remembered. I did try. Too much. And he still told me I wasn't enough. That's not love. That's performance. My therapist? Yes, I started therapy. Helped me understand that. You shouldn't have to shape-shift just to be loved. The right person doesn't want a version of you. They want you. That Monday, I forced myself out of the house and met Monica for dinner. Over wine and pasta, she invited me to her brother's birthday party. I didn't want to go at first, but she talked me into it, and that's where I met Wyatt. He's her brother's best friend from college, in town for the weekend. We talked for hours, first in the group, then on the porch swing, just the two of us, sharing stories about everything from childhood dreams to our biggest fears. There was no flirting, no pressure, just something that felt easy, like breathing. I wasn't looking for a relationship. I was still healing, but in that moment I remembered what it felt like to be seen without judgment. And honestly, that's where things really started to change. Wyatt and I traded numbers that night, and the very next day he messaged me asking if I'd want to grab a quick coffee before he headed back home. He lived about 40 minutes away in the next town, hardly long distance, but far enough that it felt like a small adventure. That coffee turned into lunch, then a walk. And somehow by the end of the day, we were having dinner and laughing like we'd known each other for years. He asked real questions, not just the polite kind, but the kind that showed he wanted to know me. He talked about his family with this warmth that was rare, and at no point did he say a single thing about how I should look, what I should be doing, or how I could improve. He liked me, as I was. No conditions. We started dating from different towns. We joked about it being long distance, but truthfully, it was just weekends spent switching locations. Sometimes I'd visit him. Other times he'd come to me. There were awkward moments, of course, like when his Roomba screamed from under the couch in the middle of a deep conversation, or the night I tried cooking dinner and managed to set off the smoke alarm. 3 times. But we just laughed. There was no tension, no blame, just shared stories we kept adding to. About 3 months into seeing Wyatt, I bumped into Elliot and Daisy at Target. I dreaded the moment for weeks, imagining I'd feel uncomfortable, bitter, maybe even second-guess everything. But when it actually happened, I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just this quiet clarity that chapter of my life was closed. We exchanged a short hello, and that was it. Elliot looked a bit taken aback at how calm I was. Daisy smiled politely, though she seemed on edge. The whole thing lasted maybe 30 seconds, but it felt like I just won something. That same week, I got a message from Elliot. First one in months. It said, "Good to see you. You look well. Would love to catch up as friends." I showed Wyatt. He just raised an eyebrow and asked, "What do you want to do about it?" No judgment. No insecurity. Just space for me to choose. I didn't reply. Some doors don't need reopening. Wyatt and I continued to grow together. Not in a whirlwind, but in the kind of way that feels steady and kind. 6 months into dating, he asked if I wanted to move in. I was already spending most of my time at his place, and his home had this warm, lived-in charm. It was older, with creaky floors and walls full of character. He'd been renovating it himself, and I loved that it wasn't perfect. It was personal. Letting go of my apartment was hard. That place had been my healing space, but moving in with Wyatt felt like moving forward. We had to navigate the usual stuff. Where my books would go, thermostat wars, he runs hot, I'm always freezing, his shoes in the hallway, my habit of leaving cabinets open. But instead of turning into fights, it became this unspoken dance. We learned to meet in the middle. Monica, the local town intel queen, told me Elliot and Daisy were getting serious. He'd introduced her to his parents, which he hadn't done with me until 2 years in. But hearing that, it didn't bother me. If anything, I hoped Daisy was being treated better than I had been. I wondered if she ever felt like she had to measure up to some invisible standard too. A few weeks after I moved in with Wyatt, Elliot started messaging again. Nothing overly inappropriate, just those little breadcrumb texts. "Heard you moved. Hope everything's good. That band we saw? They're coming to town." Sometimes I didn't respond. Sometimes I sent short, polite replies. I didn't make a secret of them, but I didn't make a big deal either. Then one night, Elliot called. Wyatt and I were making dinner when my phone lit up with his name. I paused. Wyatt noticed and simply said, "You can answer if you want." No pressure. Just trust. I declined the call. Elliot left a voicemail saying he wanted to talk in person, that he had things to apologize for. I texted him back later and said I appreciated the gesture, but I was in a healthy relationship now and didn't think meeting up would be a good idea. He replied quickly, "I understand. I just wanted to say sorry for how things ended. I didn't mean the things I said." It was late, but still, it was something. I thanked him and let it go. Life with Wyatt kept unfolding in the best kind of way. We started building routines that never felt routine. Friday night takeout, Saturday hikes, board games with friends, talks about the future that didn't feel like pressure, just possibilities. And then, one afternoon at a lakeside picnic, not the same lake where Elliot proposed, thankfully, Wyatt looked at me and said, "I can't imagine my life without you." He pulled out a ring. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't staged. It was his grandmother's vintage sapphire, beautiful and full of history. I cried, I laughed, and I said yes without thinking twice. That evening, as Wyatt and I clinked glasses of champagne on the porch, celebrating our engagement, my phone lit up. A message from Elliot. "Heard you got engaged. Didn't realize things were that serious. Just hope you're not rushing into something you'll regret." I showed it to Wyatt. He gave me a tired smile and said, "Some people really never change, huh?" We both agreed. The best response was none. I blocked the number that night. Whatever mind games Elliot thought he was playing, I was done participating. The next morning, we made it social media official. Because in this day and age, that's when it really sinks in, right? The outpouring of love from friends and family was amazing. But my favorite comment came from Monica, of course. "From not worthy to worthy of the best guy I know in under a year. Now that's an upgrade." I probably should have blushed at how publicly she referenced my ex, but honestly, she nailed it. That line summed up everything I'd been through. We set the wedding for 6 months out. Nothing over the top, just a cozy ceremony with the people we love most. That's coming up next month, and all I feel is calm, joy, and certainty. No panic. No second guessing, just peace. Because I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And then, because small towns are basically one big group chat, I heard through the grapevine that Daisy had ended things with Elliot. Apparently she reconnected with someone from her past and realized she had settled. Oh, the irony. So here I am, someone who was once told I wasn't enough, now building a life with a partner who makes me feel more than enough every single day. Funny how the worst heartbreak can lead to the best beginning. I'll share an update after the wedding if anyone's curious. And if you were one of the people who supported me through that original post, thank you. It meant more than you know. Second update. Hey Reddit. It's been about 6 months since I last posted and wow, do I have an update? I wasn't planning to share more, but recent events are just too wild to keep to myself. When I left off, Wyatt and I were planning our wedding. Unlike my last engagement, this time felt completely different. With Elliot, it was all about appearances, impressing his parents, worrying about the right dress, the right venue, the right napkin color. With Wyatt, it was about what made us happy. We planned a small, meaningful ceremony. No fuss, no pressure, just joy. And then, 2 months before the big day, Monica dropped a bombshell. Remember Daisy, Elliot's picture-perfect girlfriend? Turns out she'd been spending a lot of time with Monica's brother Barry. It started as friendly commuting, train chats, shared coffee stops. And then it turned into something more. Daisy ended things with Elliot fast and clean. And he spiraled. Monica told me Elliot had been playing the victim, telling everyone Daisy blindsided him. How unfair it all was, how he didn't deserve this. Sound familiar? As the wedding got closer, Elliot somehow found new ways to reach me, even though I'd blocked his number. He started messaging me on Instagram. At first it was light. Congrats again! You must be excited! Or, hope wedding planning's going well. I mostly ignored them, but I responded once or twice out of politeness. Then the tone changed. I've been thinking about us a lot. I made a huge mistake. I showed Wyatt. He wasn't angry, just shook his head. The week before the wedding, Elliot got bolder. Can we meet for closure? I owe you a real apology. And then, the kicker. Are you sure you're making the right choice? The audacity. This man who once told me I wasn't wife material was now questioning my decisions? I stopped replying. Our wedding day came, and it was perfect in all the messy, beautiful ways real life tends to be. It rained that morning, supposedly good luck. My veil got caught on a rose bush, and Wyatt's nephew loudly announced he had to pee right in the middle of our vows. But none of that mattered. What mattered was that we were surrounded by people who loved us for who we are, not who they wanted us to be. Oh, and Elliot, he called 3 times during the ceremony. Monica had my phone, thank God, and she silenced it without even flinching. Later, when she told me, we both cracked up. Imagine thinking your ex would answer the phone on her wedding day. Our honeymoon was simple but magical, on a quiet little beach town, an Airbnb with a view of the ocean, too much seafood, and no wedding stress. Just 2 people soaking in the beginning of something good. Then we got home. 17 missed calls. 17 from Elliot. Plus a chain of messages on Instagram ranging from, I need to talk to you, to, please don't ignore me, and finally, I made a huge mistake letting you go. I showed Wyatt. His face went serious. That same evening, as we were unpacking from our honeymoon, my phone lit up again. It was Elliot. Wyatt glanced at the screen, then looked at me calmly and asked, Want me to take this one? I hesitated, then nodded. Without missing a beat, Wyatt picked up with a friendly, Hello, Ruby's phone. There was a pause. Then Elliot, clearly caught off guard, asked, Is Ruby there? Wyatt didn't flinch. She's a little busy unpacking from our honeymoon right now. This is her husband, Wyatt. Anything I can help you with? The silence was thick. Elliot eventually muttered something about wanting to say congratulations. Wyatt thanked him, added politely that I had moved on, and said it would be best if we didn't keep in contact going forward. Calm, kind, firm. No drama, no competition, just boundaries. When he hung up, I just stared at him, amazed. That was what it meant to be with someone secure, someone steady, someone who protects your peace without turning it into a scene. Elliot never called again. He sent one final message. I understand now. I'm sorry for everything. You deserve to be happy. And just like that, the chapter closed. Looking back now, it's almost surreal to remember how shattered I felt when Elliot told me I wasn't worthy of being his wife. At the time, it felt like the end of the world. But standing here now, I realize it was actually the start of something far better. I'm not sharing this to gloat. I'm sharing because if you're going through something that feels like heartbreak, betrayal, or rejection, I want you to know, sometimes the things that break you are just clearing space for the things that build you. Wyatt and I are now talking about buying a house. A place to call our own, with no echoes of old stories or past versions of ourselves. Just a clean slate, a real beginning. So here I am, 30 years old, married, genuinely happy. And for the first time in my life, I know what it feels like to be seen and valued, not just chosen. Maybe I'll post one more update someday, but for now, life is good. Better than good. It's right. Final update. Hey again, Reddit. I truly thought I was done with this story. But life just delivered one last twist, and I had to share the final chapter with all of you. It's been nearly a year since the wedding. Wyatt and I are 15 months into marriage, and we finally found our first home together. A cozy 3-bedroom ranch from the 90s, complete with some truly questionable wallpaper and a kitchen begging for updates. But it has a big backyard, perfect for the future dog we keep debating. Retriever or rescue mutt, still undecided. Homeownership's been chaotic. The dishwasher flooded the kitchen the day after we moved in. 2 weeks later, we discovered a family of squirrels in the attic. And the bathroom sink? It gurgles like it's haunted. But fixing it all together? Weirdly kind of fun. Wyatt handles the heavy lifting. I handle the organization. And somehow, it works. Once we were mostly settled, we decided to host a housewarming party. Just a relaxed Saturday hangout with around 20 friends and family. Monica brought her legendary buffalo chicken dip. Wyatt's brothers helped with the patio setup, and everyone drifted between the kitchen, the living room, and the yard like they'd always belonged there. I was in the kitchen, refilling ice, when Monica walked in with a look I hadn't seen in a while. Part concern, part "you're not gonna believe this." "Elliot's outside," she said. "Yep, that Elliot. Holding a bottle of wine. Not invited. Apparently, he just showed up. No warning." Monica intercepted him in the driveway, trying to figure out how to handle it without causing a scene. At first, I felt that old spark of irritation. Really? He thought this was okay? But then, nothing. No panic. No tightness in my chest. No fear. I just breathed and realized he had no power here anymore. I told Monica, "Let him in." Turning him away felt like giving him too much weight. Then I found Wyatt, who was proudly showing his dad the garage shelving system he'd built. I explained. He blinked, nodded, and said, "Okay, what do you want to do?" No ego, no control, just support. Have I mentioned how much I love this man? Together we walked out to greet Elliot. Not as a warning, not as a statement, just as two people living a life they built together. We agreed to keep things civil, polite, but not overly warm. When we stepped outside, there he was, awkwardly hovering near the snack table, looking like he didn't belong. It was obvious he'd had a couple of drinks. Not wasted, but loosened up just enough to misread the moment. He handed me a bottle of wine, the exact same brand he used to mock me for buying because it wasn't refined enough. I couldn't help but smile at the irony. The conversation started like small talk. He complimented the house, asked about the neighborhood, threw in a comment about the weather, all while giving Wyatt these odd little side glances. The tension was building, but I kept it moving, casually introducing him to a few people as an old friend. More generous than accurate, but simpler than the ex who told me I wasn't good enough. Then came the turning point. One of Wyatt's cousins, completely unaware of the backstory, mentioned how happy we looked together. How perfect we seemed for one another. Elliot, under his breath, mumbled something that sounded a lot like, "She wouldn't even be here without me." I blinked. What was that? And that's when the dam broke. He launched into a bizarre speech about how his feedback had helped me grow, how his critiques motivated me to improve, and how I should be grateful to him for where I'd ended up. As if he was some kind of accidental life coach. I was stunned. But before I could respond, Wyatt calmly stepped in. No drama, no bravado, and said, "I'm grateful every day that Ruby's in my life. But her growth, that's hers. Not because someone tore her down first." Then he added gently, "Today's about celebrating our home. Maybe this isn't the best time for this conversation." But Elliot didn't get the hint. He turned to me and asked, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't let you go?" Let me go. As if I was something he misplaced. As if he hadn't looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't worthy. I looked at him and said, "No, I don't wonder. Because I'm too busy being grateful for what is. Breaking up with you was the best thing that ever happened to me. For both of us. And for the record, worth isn't something someone else gets to define. It's something you discover on your own." There was a flicker in his eyes. Like for 1 second, he almost understood. But then he looked around. At the people, the laughter, the warmth. And his face shifted. He muttered, "You've changed. You didn't used to be this cold." Before I could answer, Monica jumped in, with perfect timing. "Oh, speaking of change," she said, smiling sweetly, "I ran into Daisy and her fiancé at the farmer's market last weekend. She's pregnant, due this summer. They just bought a place across town. They looked so happy. She even showed us a picture. Daisy was glowing. Watching Elliot's face as that news sank in was like watching someone solve a puzzle they didn't know they were holding. Shock, then realization, then nothing. He drained his drink, mumbled something about needing to be somewhere, and headed for the door. Wyatt, ever the gentleman, walked him out. When he returned, he shook his head and said, "He asked me if you've always been this stubborn." I laughed. "What did you tell him?" Wyatt grinned. "I told him I prefer the term self-assured, then suggested he call an Uber." The rest of the party carried on, though I caught a few side glances and definitely overheard some whispered recaps. That's small-town life. We'll be the subject of brunch chatter for the next 3 weeks at least. The next morning, I woke up to one last message from Elliot. "Sorry about yesterday. Didn't mean to cause a scene. Hope you're happy." It was vague. Apologetic, maybe, but it felt like closure. I didn't reply. Some conversations are better left finished. So that's it. That's the real end of the story. Life's not perfect. Our roof needs replacing, we bicker about the trash, and I still have days where old insecurities try to creep back in. But now I know this. You don't earn worthiness by changing who you are to fit someone else's standards. You recognize your worth when you're finally with people who never question it. Thank you, Reddit, for being part of this journey. Your support during some of my darkest days meant more than you'll ever know. This really is my last update. But I'll be in the comments if anyone needs a reminder that walking away isn't failure. Sometimes it's the bravest thing you'll ever do.